and thank you for joining me. Michael J. Glennon is a professor at the Fletcher School of Law and Diplomacy at Tufts University. He's a former special counsel for the U.S. Senate, I think, who served under during the Clinton years. And he's written a book called National Security and Double Government, where he shows that pretty much starting with the National Security Act of 1948, the government has grown into almost two spheres of governing: the national security sphere and the regular elected sphere. And the National Security Act of 1948 included the creation of the CIA, the National Security Agency, and the National Security Council to the president, among other agencies. And according to Michael Glennon, this has grown in scope and size to this huge multi-billion-dollar public-private entity that has tentacles in all elements of the U.S. government today: the Congress, the Supreme Court, the presidency, and in many other areas of life. It also involves dark op accounts for financing. It doesn't just rely on official congressional financing, and that its influence is vast and wide. It tends to be internationalist in nature. It tends to have tentacles in the Pentagon. It supports, U.S. Interventionism abroad. It supports generally big government, socialistic approach at home. And it is this double government, what President Trump accurately calls the deep state, that President Trump is coming up against, and that he's really the first president, maybe with the exception of John F. Kennedy and possibly Ronald Reagan, since the creation of this national security apparatus, to really do so, to really be president of the United States, to really challenge this unelected behemoth, this authority. He wants to withdraw American troops from Syria and cut down on Afghanistan. Those are wars that this establishment planned and launched as part of an ongoing international condition of perpetual war that's pretty much existed since World War II, with some minor periods of lull in between. And also on the domestic front, he wants to cut back on the size of government, cut back on onerous regulation and taxes. He wants to remove federal control over areas of life, like particularly healthcare, but other areas as well, welfare, education, etc. And in this sense, he is really challenging this double government and their media apparatchiks, their lickspittles at places like CNN and MSNBC and elsewhere, which spew out constant daily hate and negativity. And they've never said anything positive. They seek to overthrow this man who was elected, and they mean it. This whole business, if you study, and it's a little too much to get into right now, but this collusion between the elements of the FBI and the Department of Justice, among other groups, to literally scuttle the election. And once President Trump was elected, to try to harass him and hound him every single day to the degree that he will be crippled. He will not be able to function, and to possibly and maybe outright overthrow him if he steps too far out of line. And this is exactly what we're seeing unfold now in this insane attempt by the Democrats in Congress to refuse to secure the southern border, which is obviously a common sense, normal thing for any sovereign nation to do. President Trump wants to do what any president would do, and he's being viciously thwarted in the effort by, I would suggest, elements of this deep state. The Democrats are just, they're not really thinking about rationally why they oppose the border. In fact, I would suggest they oppose it because they're afraid it will work, which will help President Trump. But they don't present any rational reason to oppose strengthening the border. Any normal, sane nation does this, just like you and I secure our own private homes. But yet, this is what they're going to do, and the government is at a standstill as a result. As I do this program right now, We don't know what's going to happen. I hope and pray that President Trump stands tough and gets the little bit of funding that we need to secure further the border. But either way, we have to understand the nature of what we're looking at here with regard to the enemies that are arrayed against President Trump. They are the old, regressive, big government types. I just want to end by pointing out that I'm presently visiting family in New York, and I had a very interesting discussion with a family member who absolutely is a man of the far left, and who told me that that the Soviet Union was not communist, he says. And I'm like, well, of course it was communist. It's the very essence of communism. There's no regime in the world, maybe except for Pol Pot or Mao Zedong, that was more communist than Russia was under the Soviet Union. And his response was, well, they were totalitarian. And the Nazis were also totalitarian, and they were not communists. So we don't want to take responsibility for this. We want to wash our hands of it. And this, I think, is something that is kind of thundering around out there on the left, this particular piece of legerdemain, this piece of subterfuge. And I just want to point out that not only was the Soviet Union communist, but Nazi Germany and the fascist movement were also on the left. They were not as far left as the Soviet communists. They didn't outright nationalize all property, all ownership. They kept some property in the hands of private citizens. But they were a reaction to the radicalism of communism, of course. But nevertheless, they were socialistic, and it doesn't take much of an examination to see that. And that we need to be aware of the fact that America represents the exact opposite. We recognize that rights come from the Creator, not from the state. We recognize that the left-wing experiment, which really was launched publicly around the time of the French Revolution, is one by which the state becomes God. It's a return to the old idol-worshipping times when the idol, which was man-made, was worshipped by the people, and what was put into the idol was put there by corrupt governments. And that this paradigm is what the Torah rejects when it says that you don't answer to these man-made idols. You answer to God in heaven, or God, the creator of the universe, and that you're nothing more than images of God. You're not God. And we need to recognize that. You know, I know these things that maybe I'm getting a little too off field here, but, you know, this is what we come to right today. President Trump is reawakening in us what it actually means to be American, because America is the flowering of those Torah principles, which hold that man is created in the image of God, and that we endow our rights from the Creator, not from the state. And those rights include life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And we need to remember that, and we need to support that, and we need to recognize that Donald J. Trump represents that in the closest proximity as any leader that has come down the pike in a long time. And that when he speaks about these things, he means it. You know, the left likes to complain that he lies, he lies, he lies. They're not worried about his lies, which are trivial and which I don't think he should be doing, you know, like exaggerating numbers and of people attending his inaugural and all that. But that's not what they're concerned about. They're concerned when he tells the truth. And they're concerned of the fact that when he does, he means it. And that's why he's confronting the deep state, or what Michael J. Glennon calls the double government. Anyway, thanks for watching, everyone. Have a great evening. Chuck Morse. You can purchase my books, of course, not to get in a plug here, at Amazon. Just put in my name, Chuck Morse, M-O-R-S-E, and you'll see about 17 books come up. Thanks for watching, everyone. Have a great afternoon. Have a great evening.